Today we'll discuss about the Vaishnav song Vidyara vilase. Vidyara vilase katainu kala param sahase ami tomara charan na bhajinu kabhu ekho na sharan tumi. So here, this is a song in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur exposes the futility of material knowledge. And he speaks over here, Vidyara vilase. Vidyara vilasa. Vilasa means to delight in. I delighted in knowledge. Katainu kala. I spent my whole life in delighting in knowledge. And this was my great courage. Paramasahasayami. Paramasahase. This was my very great courage. And I thought also myself to be a very great hero. By knowledge I will conquer. I'll understand the world. I'll understand the mysteries of life through the power of my intellect. And I will bring everything under control. Bhaktivinoda Thakur lived at a time of when in the contemporary intellectual milieu there was scientific triumphalism. Scientific triumphalism means the over-optimistic, overzealous, overconfidence in something. So one is actually not won, but one is going around bragging, I won the match. So that is triumphalism. Scientific triumphalism means especially that at that time the idea was that by science man will be able to bend nature to human will, and by science one by one all the problems that man is facing will be countered, and humanity will attain will make paradise on earth by the power of science, and in this way we will be able to deliver ourselves. So now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing this song in this intellectual milieu. And of course, today although scientific triumphalism is not so much there, but still there is technological paradigm. There is the idea that just by developing more and more technology, we will make life better. Although people have understood that technology alone not make us happy, but still there is an immense infatuation with technology. And the same principle that future breakthroughs in knowledge, in especially material knowledge, Bhaktivinoda Thakur here uses the word Vidya in terms of material knowledge largely. So he says how that does not lead to any salvation, any solution, any lasting solution. That is what the theme of the song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, Paramasahase, at that time, with the scientific knowledge, the idea was that man no longer needed God as the controller of nature. Through technology, man would himself be able to control nature, and thus man would become God. That was the idea prominent among people at that time. And with this idea in mind, people had this great courage. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is representing the contemporary mindset over there. And Paramasahase, this was the great courage, the audacity that they had. They felt that God will become redundant when man learns the mysteries of nature and learns to control nature. Tomara charane na bhajinu kabhu ekho na sharana tumi. Tomara charana. Tomara charan means your lotus feet. Na bhajinu kabhu. I never worship your lotus feet, my Lord. Ekhona sharana tumi. Now you are left as my only shelter. I have no shelter apart from you. Ekhona sharana tumi. So now how has this situation come about? That at one time I was doing Vidyara vilas, and now I am in a situation where I have no shelter apart from you. That means Vidya is not giving me any vilas. So how has that situation transpired? That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur will tell through his autobiographical narrative, which is actually a biographical narrative of the intellectual of his times and beyond his times to our times also, it is at large the biography of any person, any intellectual who thinks that I can succeed in life by the power of the intellect. So what happened? He continues, Podite podite bharasa badila, ज्ञान गति हबे मानी, से आशा विफल से ज्ञान दुर्बल, से ज्ञान अज्ञान जानी. So podite podite bharasa barilo. So podite podite, as I studied and studied more and more, bharasa barilo, my confidence increased. What was the confidence? Jnane gati habe mani. That knowledge itself is a destination, and if there is just the state of having more and more knowledge will lead me to a destination. And if knowledge does not lead me to a destination, if knowledge itself is not the destination, then knowledge will show me the way to destination. That means knowledge itself will give me happiness, and in case knowledge doesn't give me happiness, by knowledge I will know where to find happiness. But in either way, knowledge is the solution. Jnane gati habe mani. It does happen. When a student studies in his childhood and gets good marks, the parents may be very happy, and parents say, okay, you want chocolate, we'll give you chocolate. You want a toy, we'll give you a toy. You want a cycle, I'll give you a cycle. And then, this studying helps me get so many things. And then, as a child grows up and goes into college, and then he goes into, say, 10th standard, and then he studies really well, he studies brilliantly, and then he finds he's come in the merit list. And his name comes in the newspaper. Wow, he says studies is the gateway to success, it is the gateway to fame. Studies is the gateway to, it is what will, Jnane Gati, that is the Gati. And then as he gets into some professional college and gets a degree, and then by the power of studies, he gets a hugely lucrative job. This is the knowledge is the key. Jnane Gati habe mani. But then he suddenly he changes the tone, changes the mood over here, changes the tone, and he says, Se asha vifala se jnana durbala, se jnana ajnana jani, se asha vifala. Oh, but that asha, that hope, has turned out to be bifala. That has turned out to be in vain. Se jnana durbala. That knowledge has turned out to be weak, powerless. Se jnana jnana jani. Indeed, actually, I have come to know that this knowledge is actually ignorance. So now this is quite a heavy statement to make. So knowledge is ignorance. What is he trying to say by this? He will explain in the future verses also, but let's focus on what he said over here. Se asha bifala. What was the asha? Jnane gati habe mani. That by Gyan I will get, by Gyan is my destination. Gyan is the gateway to my destination. He says, Se asha bifala. That actually, even if I get knowledge, even if I get huge quantity of knowledge, that knowledge is not going to lead me to happiness. That knowledge does not provide me happiness. In fact, we see that no matter how much knowledge a person acquires, that knowledge, especially if it is material knowledge, it does not lead to the development of character. It does not lead to inner satisfaction. Many of the most famous authors of the last century, if we see, they were brilliant authors as far as literary capacities were concerned, but then they committed suicide out of frustration in old age. And similarly, some of those people who are considered to be one of the greatest thinkers. There was a philosopher, Albertus Camus. He was a brilliant writer, but then he was frustrated in his life, and he said the only philosophical question is whether to commit suicide or not, whether to commit suicide today or tomorrow. Life is meaningless, existence is suffering, therefore suicide is the solution. The only question is whether to commit suicide tomorrow or today. There was Nietzsche, who was also a brilliant philosopher in his own way, but then he proclaimed to the world that God is dead and his intelligence died before him, and he lived insane for the last part of his life. So se asha vifala se jnana durbala. Se jnana durbala. That knowledge which is divorced from God, that knowledge which promises us happiness independent of God, it is durbala. It does not live up to its promise. Suppose somebody comes and tells us, that I will be your bodyguard. and we trust that person and we entrust our life, and then when the crisis comes, that person, some thugs come and attack us, and then that person is easily overpowered. And it says, Hey Jnana Durbala, this bodyguard is powerless. I trusted this bodyguard, but now I have been disappointed. So the promise of the knowledge is not something that is delivered. So the knowledge promises a lot, but we see that if you look at the history of science, Einstein is widely considered to be the greatest brain of the last century, and his greatest insight is the interchangeability of matter and energy. E is equal to mc square, and that very insight led to the greatest man-made calamity of the last century, that is the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was Einstein who wrote a letter to the American President Eisenhower saying that America should develop atomic weapons, and then those atomic weapons were used against Japan, although it was unnecessary because Japan was more or less defeated. And Einstein regretted that bitterly. He said that that the disaster that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the chain of events which started off, which culminated in that disaster, they all started off with his letter. So his greatest insight led to the greatest disaster of the last century. It's not to blame Einstein in any way, but it is to point out the nature of how what seems to be like progress may well end up as a regress in terms of making more of a harmful contribution than a positive contribution. So he's saying that se jnana durbala, not only is this jnana weak, powerless, it does not deliver, but se jnana ajnana jani, se jnana, this knowledge, and I declare it to be ignorance. I found that I have realized that it is ignorance. Why is it ignorance? Because this knowledge does not satisfy the human heart. This knowledge, material knowledge, which is divorced from God, does not satisfy our human longing for meaning. As a famous scientist, atheistic scientist, he said that the more we understand, the more we comprehend the universe, the more it seems pointless. The more it seems pointless. And a Nobel laureate scientist, Schrödinger, he also pointed out that actually science may help us to make sense of the world and to put things in a majestically consistent order, but when it comes to dealing with questions, with issues that are very dear to us, with beautiful and ugly, with life, with immortality and death, with taste and color, science has no answer to these questions which are intimate to the human heart. Science maintains a ghastly silence. So on one side, we think that we have advanced a lot in knowledge, but at the same time, actually we are going into deeper ignorance due to our inability to realize that this knowledge is not addressing the issues that are closest to the human heart. And in that way, a person who is ignorant at least knows that I am ignorant. A person who is ignorant and thinks that I am in knowledge is actually in greater ignorance, because that person will never think of acquiring knowledge, because that person thinks I already have knowledge. So materialistic knowledge, godless knowledge, is in that sense ignorance. Certainly, we may have advanced in terms of facts and figures and even understanding of matter per se. But in terms of the purpose of matter and the purpose of existence, we have not got any knowledge. As Martin Luther King said that our scientific progress scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. We have guided missiles and misguided men. That is the tragedy of our age. And say jnana jani, understand that this knowledge is actually ignorance. And jada vidyayat mayar vaibhav tomar bhajane badha मोह जन्मिया अनित्य संसारे जीव के कोरये गाधा. Jada Vidyajata. That means that this is Jada Vidya. This is knowledge about matter alone. And Mayara Vaibhava. Vaibhava means greatness. The sense of greatness that we acquire. Jada Vidyayat Mayara Vaibhava. This is the Vaibhava of Maya. And Tomara Bhajane Badha. Tomara Bhajane. To your worship, this is a Badha, it's obstacle. Moha Janamiya. And it gives birth to illusion. Anitya Samsare. It makes us think that Sanitya Samsara is Nitya. This is where we'll find happiness. Jiva ke koraye gadha. Jiva, and it makes the soul into a gadha, into a donkey. Now what is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's meaning by this? Jada Vidya Jata. Jada Vidya. So most of modern scientific knowledge is actually what can be called more technically as not just scientific knowledge, but scientistic knowledge. There is a branch of knowledge called scientism, and scientism is the belief that science is the only way to knowledge, and that there is nothing beyond matter. Matter is all that exists. So this is fanatical materialism, and there is also functional materialism, which holds that other things may exist, but they don't matter. Matter is all that matters. Either way, these are misconceptions, and these misconceptions are extremely harmful for our overall growth. Because as long as we think that matter is all that matters, or matter is all that exists, then we never care for our spiritual side. So Jada Vidya Jata. And right from the dawn of scientific knowledge, or dawn of the age of modern science, science has focused on the measurable, quantifiable aspects of things. And because of its focus on measurable, quantifiable aspects, that which is immeasurable, that is non-quantifiable, science has chosen to neglect that. And by choosing to neglect such things, the result has been that science has been left with, humanity has been left with a knowledge that is dangerously partial. That makes one proud of one's knowledge, but does not deal with the issues closest to the human heart. So it is Mayara Vaibhava. Mayara Vaibhava. All this advanced technological knowledge, it is a monument to illusion. Mayara Vaibhava. And a monument to illusion. That means it is a big monument, but actually it does not take us out of illusion. In fact, it makes us proud of being in illusion. Because it's one thing to be in illusion, but it's quite another thing. It's a much deeper form of illusion to be proud of one's knowledge while being in illusion. So we stay in illusion about the purpose of life, about our essential identity, and yet we think that we have advanced and got a lot of knowledge. So, therefore, because it makes us proud of our material advancement, it becomes Tomara Bhajane Badha. It is an obstacle in worshipping you, my Lord. Kunti Maharani prays how there are 4 things which take away the impetus to serve the Lord, to even call out to the Lord. Janmaishwara Shuta Shribhir Edhaman Madah Puman Naivarhatya Vidhatum Vai Tamakinchana Gocharam. This is Janmaishwara Shuta Shribhir. Janma Aishwarya, birth in a high family, wealth, Shruta is learning, and Shribhir is beauty. These 4 things make one feel as complacent, make one feel as if, I have whatever it needs to be happy, therefore I don't need anything else. And so, let me just increase these and delight in these. So similar is one of those things. This is Shuta. Kunti Maharani says Shuta, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur is also saying here that this knowledge, Shuta learning, Vidya, what happens? Tomara Bhajane Badha. We feel that there is no need for God at all. Laplace was a famous mathematician, and when he made an equation of mathematics and he presented it to the French king, and which was supposed to describe the motion of the cosmic bodies, and at that time the king asked, "Where is God in these equations?" He said, "I have no need for that hypothesis," he said. So now what he meant was that in his specific mechanistic explanation of the universe, that God is not needed. But people extrapolated from that and they said that actually in general there is no need for God to explain things. So that is feeling that God is unnecessary, that is the greatest obstacle to bhakti. Because a devotee feels that even my existence is impossible without Krishna. And actually it's not just a devotee's feeling, it's an ontological reality that if God were not sustaining the world, nothing would exist. But we don't realize that, and that's why we stay trapped in material existence. And the knowledge which makes us feel that God is more and more unnecessary, that is a badha, it's an obstacle to devotion. Moha janmiya nitya samsare jiva ke koraye gadha. Moha janmiya. So it gave birth to illusion. So knowledge is meant to remove illusion, but what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says is, this knowledge engenders illusion, this knowledge breeds illusion. Moha janmiya anitya samsare. What is the moha? This world is anitya, it's temporary. No matter what we do, that we cannot change the temporary nature of this world. It is temporary and it is going to stay temporary. But unfortunately, when we think that in this world we can become happy by ourselves without needing God, then our illusion becomes deeper. As it is, we have forgotten God in this world. But when we further think that we can do without God, then our illusion becomes much worse, much deeper. So, moha jannamiya anitya samsare. So we get plunged deep into this temporary existence. Anitya samsare jiva ke karaye gadha. Jiva ke karaye. Jiva ke karaye badha. Jiva ke karaye gadha means Jiva ke karaye, that it makes the soul into a ass. Now what is the characteristic of an ass? The ass works and works and works and gets very little results for its work. But materialistic people, so similarly, even materialistic intellectuals, they often work and work and work, and they may get some transitional sense of meaning and achievement through their work. But ultimately, their achievement of their sense of meaning is within a framework of meaninglessness, and that's why it ultimately becomes the important thing is we need to recognize that this knowledge will put us into illusion and will not help us advance in our life, and that's why this knowledge has to be carefully balanced, subordinated to spiritual knowledge. Otherwise the soul works like an ass, but at the end of the life, soul has nothing left with it. And even in this life, the soul may lose everything. What to speak of the next? In the Bhagavad Gita, one of the characteristics, one of the 20 items of knowledge says, Adhyatma Jnanatyatvam, Tattva Jnanartha Darshan, the eternal, that actually it is spiritual knowledge that is eternal, and that's why that is what should be primarily pursued. But unfortunately, that realization doesn't come to those who are so caught in materialistic knowledge. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes this same narrative brutally autobiographical. Brutally autobiographical means he does say, this is my own story. Se gadha hoye samsare boja bahinu anek kal bardhakye ekho na shakatira bhave kichu nahi lag bhal. So sei gadha hoye. So it is Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying that I am not just doing some abstract analysis of some distant phenomena. I am actually telling the story of my own life. that I have become a gadha like this. I have become an ass. I have become a donkey who slaved to get slaved in the pursuit of knowledge. And what happened? Samsare boja. I carried the burden of samsara, of material existence. Bahinu aneka kala, for a long, long time. See that there may be, even among intellectuals, there can be people in goodness, in passion and ignorance. And people who are in goodness will relatively be good, will relatively be better than other people. But just as the overall society goes towards the lower modes, passion and ignorance, then even the intellectual community goes towards passion and ignorance. And that's why even among the intellectual community there is envy, there is politics, there is backbiting, and with the stealing of credit, one person does research and another publishes one's own name. And of course there are measures to counter all this also. The point is that that knowledge promises salvation, but it doesn't offer, leave alone salvation. Salvation refers to a permanent solution. It doesn't offer even a lasting solution in this world. All the promise of knowledge actually turns out to be a disappointment, and one finds that even in the pursuit of knowledge, one is entangled more and more in material existence. Because even in the pursuit of knowledge, one has the battles of prestige, position, power, lobbying, politics, all these things come up. And then, therefore, what happens? Samsarere boja. That by becoming a donkey like this, I have been carrying the burden of material existence for a long time. Bahinu aneka kala. Bahinu aneka kala. For a long time. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself in his life, he lived at a time when the British government was ruling India, and the British government had set competitive exams to select candidates who would work in its companies. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself studied for various exams till he finally got a stable job where he worked as a district magistrate. So, and of course, along with his studies for getting a job, he himself also studied Western philosophy quite deeply, and he studied Christianity also seriously. So the point is that he spiritualized most of his quest for knowledge, but even he had to pursue material knowledge for his material career. And now he is saying Bahinu aneka kala. For a long time I did this, but then Bardhakya ekhona shakatira bhave. Bardhakya, but then old age comes along, and then shakatira bhave. Shakti is no longer there. Now this refers not just to physical energy, which definitely decreases as we grow old, but along with that there is actually even the intellectual energy goes down. As people grow old, they start forgetting things. And also, some people might be exceptions, and they often become celebrated because they are exceptions. In general, there is a decline of intellectual faculties, and nowadays it's very grievous when there are so many people who get intellectually degenerative diseases, where like people get something like Alzheimer's, and they forget even their names and their loved ones, and their caregivers may care for years and decades, and these people for whom they are caring, these patients, they don't even recognize, leave alone acknowledge. And it's extremely distressing situation when all the memories that one has built to cherish for a lifetime, they are wiped out, not even at the time of that, long before that. So a person may become the president of America, but if that person gets Alzheimer's and starts losing the memory, then in this very life that person has found that my being a president has forgotten that I was a president. So it's quite a grim prospect to think that how old age can make us miserable. Shakatira bhave. So a person may have been a famous intellectual, but as the person grows old and the intellectual faculties decline, then that person realizes that I cannot go on being the kind of champion or genius, whatever I was, because my memory is failing me, my intelligence is failing me. And then because the person is obsessed with the intellect and with exhibiting intellectual powers for the sake of getting name and fame. When the intellect lets the person down, then that person doesn't know, what am I supposed to live for? What am I supposed to do? Kichu nahi lage bhalo. Kichu nahi lage bhalo. That nothing seems pleasurable to me. Kichu nahi lage bhalo. That actually there is what can I do? What that which I lived for, suddenly the ability to do that has been taken away from me. And of course, this happens all the more for people who live for sensual pleasures. Now, suppose they get sensual impotency, then they just don't know what to live for. But that is of course quite grievous for those people who go through it. But something similar happens when the intellectual potency goes away and the person doesn't know, what am I living for? Kichu nahi lage bhalo. Nothing seems pleasurable. What am I to do? And such a what happens? Jivan jatana hoilo ekhon se vidya bhelo avidyara jwala ghatilo bisham se vidya hoilo shelo. So he says, Jivan jatana. Whole life has become a misery. Jivan jatana. Hoilo ekhona. The whole of life has become a misery. Because one is constantly tormented by the feeling of defeat, of pointlessness, of hopelessness. What am I living for? Jivan jatana hoilo ekhona se vidya bhelo. So that vidya turns out to be avidya. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is returning to the point which he had said earlier. Se jnana ajnana jani. So he has made that statement, bold claim that this knowledge I have realized to be actually ignorance. And he's repeating that now. Se vidya bhelo. That knowledge I have realized to be ignorance. Now what does this mean again? That actually knowledge is meant to prepare us for whatever problems life is going to give us. Now, suppose when we go on a journey, then we usually take a map with us, or we at least have to gain some knowledge. Okay, how is the terrain? I am going on a truck, but is there a proper road, or what? Can I go by a truck? Can I go by a car? Can I go by a bike? We want knowledge is meant to ease our journey and decrease our difficulties in a particular journey. But if that knowledge doesn't provide us the necessary information, and if in spite of having that knowledge we end up that we got a map, we got some knowledge, but then we found out that some very important knowledge that was there, that was not given. There are dacoits on the way, and those dacoits are going to plunder us. Then the highwaymen who plunder us will be furious. We'll be disappointed and will be horrified. Furious that we were not told about it. And if there were people who had loved us, we would feel disappointed by them, betrayed by them, and we'll be horrified because now those highwaymen are going to plunder us. So say vidya bhelo. So like that, there is the great promise of material knowledge that it will bring pleasure and joy, but actually it turns out the miseries of material existence continue, and because our promise has been disappointed, so the miseries increase more and more. Avidyara jwala ghatilo bishama. Avidyara jwala. So avidyara jwala. So this avidya has become like a flame. Ghatilo bishama. And I am being burned in this flame. Se vidya hoilo shelo. And this very knowledge is now taunting at me. Oh, I have a big degree in front of my name. But still, what is the point of it all? I don't know how to free myself from misery. I don't know why I am suffering. And what is the use of all peripheral knowledge that I have got? As Sanatana Goswami says, that people think that people call me a Pandit, and I also accept that I am a Pandit. But I don't know Why am I suffering the threefold miseries? I don't know that. And therefore my claims to be a Pandita are all pointless, are all useless. Say Vidya hoilo shelo. This knowledge which I claim to have, that knowledge itself has become something which taunts me, which drives painfully, agonizingly home to me the realization that what I have acquired is ultimately pointless. And then, Tomar charan bina kichu dhan, samsara na chayar, bhakti vinod jada vidya chadi, tu apad kore sar. Tomar charan bina kichu dhan. That apart from your lotus feet, there is no other treasure. Bina kichu dhana. There is no other treasure. Samsarena chayar. In all of material existence, there is no other treasure. Bhakti Vinoda Jada Vidya Chadi. Bhakti Vinod. Therefore, Bhakti Vinod, he gives us Jada Vidya. Jada Vidya Chadi. Giving up this ignorance knowledge, this knowledge of matter. What does he do? Tuapada kore sara. He accepts your lotus feet as the essence of everything. So now, after pursuing other knowledge and realizing the futility of that knowledge, what is Bhaktivinoda Thakur doing? He's stating, Tomara charana bina kichu dhana. That apart from your lotus feet, there is no other treasure. Samsarena chayar. This was actually the realization of Vyasadeva also. He wrote, now today's advancement of knowledge is largely divorced from God. The knowledge that Vedyas wrote was not divorced from God. It was just that it was not focused on God. It was religious knowledge and it did talk about God, but its focus was not on God. It was focused on karma kanda, of how by practicing dharma, by devoting some time to God, one will get artha and kama and one will be happy. And then the Upanishads talk about jnana kanda, about mukti. But that also focused more on cessation of suffering, not on the glorification of the Lord. So even after that, even that which was knowledge, which is a partial glorification of God, even that didn't bring satisfaction to the heart of Vedavyas. So what to speak of knowledge that has no glorification of God, and that often has denigration of God? How can that bring satisfaction to the human heart? It will not. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying is that the only knowledge that can bring satisfaction to the heart is the knowledge that your lotus feet are everything. That your lotus feet are the treasure that we should aspire for in life. That it is in your devotion that all our aspirations for happiness will be fulfilled. And everything else that promises to fulfill those aspirations is actually misleading. And therefore we should stay away from it. So, Tomara charana bina kichu dhana. Apart from your lotus feet, bina kichu dhana. There is no other treasure. Samsarena chayara. There is no other treasure in samsara apart from your lotus feet. And therefore, bhakti vinoda. There is no other treasure. What does Bhaktivinoda Thakur do? Jada vidya chadi. I am renouncing material knowledge. I am renouncing the infatuation with material knowledge. I am rejecting the promise of material knowledge that will bring happiness. And Tuvapada kore sara. I accept your lotus feet as the essence. I take shelter of those lotus feet. In the Bhagavad Gita also, it is described in the Vedic context. But again, the same principle applies. It says, who is Jnanavan? Bahunam janmanam ante. Jnanavan mam prapadyate. Vasudevah sarvamiti. Samatma sudurlabha. So, Bahunam janmanam ante. After many, many lifetimes, what happens? The person comes to the realization that after it is said that after many lifetimes the person becomes Jnanavan and surrenders to Krishna. Mam prapadyate. And when one surrenders to Krishna, then what happens? Vasudevah sarvamiti. Vasudevah. That one who understands Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that actually Vasudeva is everything. He is the essence of everything. We don't need anything beyond Vasudeva. We need to focus on that Lord Vasudeva and achieve that Lord Vasudeva. What happens by that? Such a person, Samahatma Sudurlabha, such a person is a Mahatma, and such a person is extremely rare, Sudurlabha. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying that in the spirit of this particular verse from the Bhagavad Gita, that person becomes Jnanavan, understand that Vasudeva Sarvamiti. So similarly, Tua Pad Kore Sar, your lotus feet are the essence of everything, essence of all knowledge, and the essence of all purposes of life, the essence of all treasures, the essence of all liberations, the essence of all dharmas. They are the essence of everything. Those lotus feet, I'll take shelter of. So in our lives also, we have various, many of us, nowadays most of us are knowledge workers. We don't work on a construction site. Some people may be doing it. Some people work on construction. Some people do work on it actually. Some people work on construction sites. Some people drive cars and things like that. But many people today are knowledge workers. And the more knowledge a person acquires, quite often that person, the higher the salary that the person gets, the higher the position to which the person rises, the greater is the prestige that the person gets in society. Quite often it works like that. So knowledge can infatuate us with its promises also. But by remembering that, yes, knowledge may have some functional value in this world in terms of helping us to navigate this world, to earn a livelihood in this world, to live respectably in this world. But that is not the purpose of life. And if we let the hope of knowledge intoxicate us and distract us from Krishna, then we will miss out on life's true potential, and we will become disappointed and frustrated and exhausted even in this life, what to speak of the next. But while using knowledge for whatever functional purpose we can use it for, but we focus our head and our heart on Krishna. We use our intellectual faculty to understand how Krishna is the essence of everything, how it is Krishna whom we should be pursuing with everything. And we use our devotional faculty, our heart, we direct our emotions towards Krishna and seek His shelter, knowing that it is only in Krishna that our heart's aspiration for happiness, love and joy will be fulfilled. Tua pada kore sar. So when we get infatuated by things of this world, we can remember, my dear Lord, I take shelter of you. I make your lotus feet the essence of my aspirations. Please let me seek you, my Lord, and nothing else. Let me not let anything else distract me from you. If I have to do other things in this world, let me harmonize them with you. Let me subordinate them to you, and let me pursue them as a means of pursuing you, as a means of serving you, and let them not take me away from you, my Lord. Thank you.